The snow fell softly over Evergreen Hollow, blanketing the small town in an ethereal hush. The streets were adorned with twinkling lights, wreaths hung on every door, and the faint sounds of carolers drifted through the frosty air. But the festive cheer that enveloped the town stopped short at the edge of Elliot Grant's cabin. Hidden at the foot of Pinewood Forest, the cabin was dark, its windows frosted and lifeless, much like the man inside. Elliot sat slumped in an old armchair by the unlit fireplace, staring at a picture of his wife, Laura. Her radiant smile felt like a cruel echo of a life that had been ripped away from him 1 year ago. Christmas Eve, the day that should have been filled with joy, had become a cruel reminder of his failure. He should have been driving that night. He should have stopped her from going to pick up his gift. The accident replayed in his mind in an endless loop. The screech of tires, the blinding headlights, the phone call that shattered his world. For the past year, Elliot had been a ghost of himself. His photography, once his passion and livelihood, lay abandoned. The awards that had once lined his shelves were now gathering dust. He hadn't picked up a camera since the funeral. The lens that once captured life's beauty now felt like a hollow frame for a world he no longer understood. The world outside his cabin seemed to move on. The town celebrated Christmas with the same fervor as always, oblivious to the weight-crushing Elliot. He avoided the town square, its twinkling lights and joyous carols a cruel contrast to his grief. The forest became his refuge, a place where he could wander aimlessly, lost in the cold silence of the trees. It was on one such walk, with the snow crunching beneath his boots and the wind biting at his face, that Elliot heard it, a low growl. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. From the shadows of the trees emerged a wolf, its amber eyes locked onto him. It snarled, baring sharp teeth, its body coiled to strike. Panic surged through Elliot as he realized he had no escape. His legs felt like lead, rooted to the spot as the wolf advanced. Then, out of nowhere, a golden streak cut through the air. A dog, a golden retriever, leaped between Elliot and the wolf, barking ferociously. The wolf hesitated, its ears flattening, before retreating into the shadows with a final snarl. Elliot collapsed to his knees, trembling as he stared at the dog. Its fur glistened in the pale sunlight, and its warm brown eyes met his with an intensity that felt almost human. "Where did you come from?" Elliot whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding of his heart. The dog wagged its tail, stepping closer and nudging his hand with its nose. Its fur was thick and soft, its body radiating warmth against the icy air. There was no collar, no sign of an owner. The dog seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, like a guardian angel. Elliot wasn't sure what compelled him, but he decided to bring the dog home. Maybe it was gratitude for saving his life, or maybe it was the way the dog looked at him, as if it understood his pain. He trudged back to the cabin, the golden retriever trotting faithfully at his side. Inside, the cabin was as cold and dark as ever, but the dog brought an unexpected warmth. It sniffed around curiously before settling by the unlit fireplace. Elliot stood awkwardly, unsure of what to do. He hadn't cared for anything, not even himself, in months. Still, he rummaged through his pantry, finding an old can of soup and some crackers. The dog ate enthusiastically, wagging its tail in thanks. "You need a name," Elliot murmured, watching the dog. "Marley," he decided, recalling Laura's favorite Christmas carol. Marley was dead. It felt fitting, in a strange way. Marley seemed to accept the name instantly, wagging his tail in approval. That night, for the first time in months, Elliot didn't feel entirely alone. As he lay in bed, Marley curled up on the rug beside him, breathing softly. The rhythmic rise and fall of the dog's chest lulled Elliot into a restless but strangely comforting sleep. The following morning, Elliot woke to find Marley sitting by the front door, staring at him expectantly. It was as if the dog knew it was time for a walk. Begrudgingly, Elliot pulled on his boots and coat, and the two ventured into the forest. The snow had stopped, leaving the world crisp and bright. Sunlight filtered through the bare branches, casting long shadows on the glistening ground. Marley bounded ahead, his energy infectious. Elliot found himself smiling faintly, a rare occurrence. But as they walked, he noticed something strange. Marley didn't roam aimlessly like most dogs would. He seemed to have a purpose, leading Elliot to specific spots in the forest. One such spot was a clearing where a small bench sat, half buried in snow. Elliot recognized it immediately. It was where he and Laura had once spent countless afternoons talking about their dreams. "How?" Elliot muttered, his voice trailing off. Marley sat by the bench, wagging his tail as if encouraging Elliot to sit. Reluctantly, he brushed the snow off the seat and sat down. The memories flooded back, sharp and bittersweet. He had avoided this place for a year, unable to face the weight of what he'd lost. Yet Marley had brought him here, almost as if guiding him to confront his grief. For the next few days, similar incidents occurred. Marley would lead Elliot to places tied to his memories of Laura, a bridge where they had taken anniversary photos, a coffee shop where they had shared countless mornings. Each time, Elliot felt a pang of pain, but also a strange sense of catharsis. It was as if Marley was helping him face his past, one step at a time. Still, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that there was something extraordinary about Marley. The dog's timing was uncanny, his actions deliberate. It was as if Marley knew exactly what Elliot needed, even before Elliot himself did. One snowy evening, as Elliot sat by the fire with Marley at his feet, he found himself talking to the dog. "I don't know where you came from," he said, his voice soft, "but I think you're here for a reason." Marley wagged his tail, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames. In that moment, Elliot felt a glimmer of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The first cracks in the wall he had built around himself were forming, and Marley, with his unwavering presence, was the one holding the chisel. Marley's presence in Elliot's life brought an undeniable shift. Though reluctant, Elliot found himself leaving the cabin more often, drawn by Marley's boundless energy and peculiar habits. The golden retriever seemed to possess an uncanny intuition, leading Elliot to places tied to his past while never lingering too long in his sorrow. Marley's companionship began to chip away at the icy walls Elliot had built around himself. One morning, while sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee, Elliot noticed Marley staring at him from the door, his leash clutched in his teeth. It had become a ritual, Marley dictating their outings. Elliot sighed, setting his mug down and pulling on his coat. "All right, boy. Where to this time?" he muttered. The town of Evergreen Hollow was alive with holiday preparations. Lights twinkled on lampposts, and the aroma of baked goods wafted from the cafe on Main Street. But Elliot avoided the festive bustle, choosing quieter paths instead. Marley, however, seemed intent on leading him elsewhere. The retriever pulled him toward the heart of town, where a commotion near the community center caught his attention. "Dr. Carter, we're running out of time," a frazzled voice called. Elliot's gaze landed on a woman standing in the middle of the chaos. She had fiery red hair pulled into a loose bun and wore a heavy parka dusted with snow. Beside her was a table cluttered with papers, donation jars, and handmade signs. The largest sign read, "Save our shelter." Before Elliot could retreat, Marley bolted toward the table, barking enthusiastically. The woman turned, startled, before kneeling to greet the dog. "Well, aren't you a handsome boy?" she said, scratching behind Marley's ears. Her eyes flicked to Elliot, who approached hesitantly. "Is he yours?" Yeah," Elliot replied, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Sorry about that. He's, friendly. No need to apologize. We could use some friendly faces around here," she said, standing. "I'm Anna Carter. I run the local shelter, or what's left of it." Elliot nodded awkwardly, unsure how to respond. Anna gestured to the table. "We're trying to raise funds to keep it open, but with the holidays, well, people are generous, but it's never enough." Before he could think better of it, Elliot asked, "What happens if you don't raise enough?" Anna's smile faltered. "The animals will be sent to other facilities, some out of state, but not all of them will make it. Older dogs, cats, they're harder to place." Marley nudged Elliot's hand, as if urging him to say something. Instead, he muttered, "That's tough. I hope it works out." As he turned to leave, Anna called after him. "Wait, you look familiar. Are you Elliot Grant, the photographer?" Elliot froze, a lump forming in his throat. He hadn't heard his name spoken like that in over a year. Slowly, he turned back. I was. Not anymore. Well, it's good to meet you, anyway, Anna said, undeterred. If you ever want to help out, we could use someone with your eye for detail. Even if it's just for photos to promote the fundraiser. Elliot mumbled something non-committal and walked away, Marley trotting at his side. But Anna's words lingered, a quiet challenge to the man he had become. Back at the cabin, Elliot couldn't shake the memory of Anna's plea or the state of the shelter. Marley lay at his feet, chewing on a rawhide bone. What are you trying to do to me, huh? Elliot asked, scratching the dog's head. Marley simply wagged his tail. The next day, Marley seemed unusually insistent, dragging Elliot toward the shelter again. This time, Elliot didn't resist. He found Anna in the middle of the chaos once more, directing volunteers and organizing supplies. When she spotted him, her eyes lit up. Elliot, back so soon? She teased. Marley insisted. He replied, his tone dry. Do you still need help with those photos? Anna's face brightened. Absolutely. Thank you. Elliot spent the afternoon photographing the shelter's animals. Each click of the camera felt foreign at first, his hands stiff and uncertain. But as the hours passed, he found himself slipping into old rhythms, framing shots with an instinct he thought he had lost. Marley, ever the helper, posed dutifully with the animals, his charm bringing out their best sides. By evening, Elliot had captured dozens of photos, each one brimming with personality and heart. Anna leaned over his shoulder, admiring the images on his camera. These are incredible, she said. You've given us a real chance to connect with people. For the first time in months, Elliot felt a flicker of pride. He nodded gruffly, avoiding her gaze. Glad I could help. As the days passed, Elliot found himself returning to the shelter regularly. He photographed more animals, helped with the day-to-day chaos, and even found himself opening up to Anna. Her optimism and determination were infectious, though he still kept his guard up. Marley, however, seemed determined to push him further. One evening, after finishing a photo shoot, Marley led Elliot into the shelter's office. On the desk was a weathered folder labeled Missing Persons, Christmas Eve, 3 years ago. Curiosity piqued, Elliot flipped through its contents. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, and photographs of a family. A man, a woman, and a young boy. All of them smiling beside a golden retriever, Marley. Anna found him staring at the file. I see you found the mystery, she said quietly. That's Marley's old family. Elliot's stomach twisted. What happened to them? They disappeared on Christmas Eve 3 years ago, Anna explained. Their car was found abandoned near the river, but there was no sign of them. Marley was found wandering the woods a week later. No one ever claimed him. Elliot looked down at Marley, who stared back with those wise, knowing eyes. How is that possible? No one knows, Anna said. But sometimes I think Marley's still searching for them. Or maybe he's just looking for someone to help. Elliot felt a pang of guilt. Had Marley chosen him for a reason? Or was he simply the next in a long line of people who had failed to give the dog what he needed? That night, Elliot couldn't sleep. His mind raced with questions about Marley's past and the family he had lost. For the first time in a long time, Elliot felt a stirring of purpose, an urge to uncover the truth. But it wasn't just Marley's mystery that weighed on him. He was beginning to realize that his own healing might depend on facing his grief head-on. The next morning, Elliot approached Anna with a proposition. I want to help find out what happened to Marley's family, he said, his voice steady. Anna's eyes widened in surprise. Are you sure? Elliot nodded. If Marley can give me a second chance, the least I can do is try to give him the same. Together, they began piecing together the fragments of Marley's story. The investigation would prove more challenging than either of them anticipated, but Elliot felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't running from his pain. He was running towards something that mattered. And Marley, as always, was right by his side. Marley's presence seemed to stir more than just Elliot's dormant emotions. As Elliot and Anna dove deeper into the mystery of Marley's past, they unearthed layers of complication that extended far beyond the missing family. What started as an effort to piece together Marley's story began intertwining with the challenges surrounding the shelter, the small town's hidden struggles, and the enigmatic threads connecting them all. One cold morning, Elliot and Anna revisited the shelter's old records, hoping to find overlooked clues. Among the faded documents, they discovered a peculiar letter from John Everett, Marley's previous owner. It was addressed to the town's police department and detailed suspicions about activity near the Everett property shortly before the family's disappearance. The letter described unmarked trucks and heavy machinery moving through the area late at night, as well as freshly dug earth along the frozen riverbank. Activities that seemed unusual and unauthorized. The Everetts had planned to report these disturbances formally, but vanished before they could take further action. "This doesn't feel like a coincidence," Elliot murmured, staring at the letter. "There's more to this." Anna nodded, her expression troubled. And if the Everetts knew something, it might explain why they disappeared. But how does Marley fit into all of this? Marley, lying at their feet, let out a low, thoughtful sound, as if urging them forward. Encouraged by the discovery, they decided to visit the riverbank mentioned in the letter. The area was secluded, blanketed in snow, and eerily quiet. As they walked, Marley became visibly agitated, sniffing the ground and pulling on his leash with unusual urgency. When they reached a bend in the river, Marley began digging furiously at the frozen ground. Beneath the frost, Elliot and Anna uncovered fragments of a metallic object, a rusted key. "What is this doing out here?" Anna asked, brushing the dirt from the key's surface. Elliot turned it over in his hand, frowning. "It looks like a storage key. But for what?" The discovery reignited their determination. Back in town, they scoured local directories for storage facilities and eventually found a match. A facility on the outskirts of Evergreen Hollow that had been abandoned for years. The building, derelict and covered in graffiti, seemed like the perfect place to hide something. With the rusted key in hand, they unlocked one of the units and found themselves staring at an unexpected trove of evidence. Inside the storage unit were boxes of documents, old photographs, and maps. One particularly damning piece was a series of blueprints for a waste disposal operation that appeared to have been hidden near the Everett's property. Scrawled across one of the documents were the chilling words, "Witnesses are liabilities." The implication was clear. Someone had silenced the Everetts. "This was no accident," Anna whispered, her voice tight with anger. "They knew, and they paid the price for it." Elliot's chest tightened as he stared at the evidence. He thought of Marley, how the dog had somehow survived whatever tragedy had befallen his family and had spent years carrying their story, waiting for someone to listen. "We can't let this go," Elliot said firmly. "Not now." As they left the storage facility, Elliot felt the weight of their discovery settle heavily on his shoulders. The truth had taken them further than they had expected, but it had also placed them in a precarious position. Sterling Developments, the corporation tied to the shelter's closure, was directly implicated in the documents. The company had a notorious reputation for using its influence to squash dissent, and Elliot knew they would not back down without a fight. That night, the danger became personal. Elliot returned to his cabin to find the door ajar and the interior ransacked. His photographs, papers, and laptop were destroyed, a clear warning to stop digging. Marley growled low in his throat, his body tense as he sniffed around the damaged space. Elliot called Anna immediately. "They know," he said, his voice tight. "Someone broke into my house." Anna's sharp intake of breath was audible over the line. "Are you okay? Did they take anything important?" "They destroyed everything, but I don't think they found the evidence. We need to move fast." Despite the fear coursing through him, Elliot felt a flicker of resolve. He had spent so long avoiding the world, burying himself in grief and guilt, but now he had a purpose. And for the first time in years, he wasn't running away. Together, Elliot and Anna decided to present their findings to the town council. They hoped to expose Sterling Developments not only for their role in the shelter's closure, but also for their potential connection to the Everett's disappearance. As they prepared for the meeting, the community began rallying around them. The photos Elliot had taken for the shelter had gone viral, drawing attention from nearby towns and sparking a wave of support. Donations poured in, and volunteers came forward to help save the shelter. But Sterling Developments wasn't going down without a fight. Representatives from the corporation began spreading rumors, discrediting Elliot as a reclusive has-been and framing Anna as an irrational activist. The pressure was immense, and doubts began to creep in. Still, Marley's unwavering presence reminded Elliot of why they were fighting. The dog seemed to know when Elliot's resolve faltered, nudging him with a cold nose or resting his head on Elliot's knee as if to say, "You're not alone." As the date of the council meeting approached, Marley led Elliot to one final, unexpected destination: the abandoned Everett family home. The house was a shell of its former self, its windows boarded up and its roof sagging under the weight of snow. Inside, Elliot found a journal belonging to John Everett. The final entry read, "If anything happens to us, let the truth come to light. Protect Marley. He'll show the way." The words hit Elliot like a tidal wave. Marley wasn't just a dog. He was a living, breathing testament to the Everett's resilience and their hope that someone would one day uncover the truth. On Christmas Eve, the town council meeting was packed. Representatives from Sterling Developments sat smugly in the front row, their confidence unwavering. But as Elliot and Anna presented their evidence, the atmosphere shifted. The documents from the storage facility, combined with the journal and testimony from a former employee of the company, painted a damning picture. The room buzzed with shock and anger as the pieces fell into place. "This isn't just about a shelter," Elliot said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This is about standing up to those who exploit and destroy without consequence. It's about a family who lost everything because they refused to stay silent. And it's about a dog who carried their story until someone was willing to listen." By the end of the meeting, the council voted unanimously to halt Sterling's plans and launch a full investigation into the company's activities. The shelter was saved, and the Everett story was finally brought to light. As Elliot stepped outside into the crisp night air, Marley trotted beside him, his tail wagging happily. Snow began to fall, blanketing the town in a soft glow. For the first time in years, Elliot felt a sense of peace, a quiet, steady hope that maybe, just maybe, things could heal. Looking down at Marley, he smiled. "You showed me the way, didn't you, boy?" he said softly. Marley barked, his warm eyes gleaming with that unshakable wisdom. And as the church bells rang out in the distance, marking the arrival of Christmas, Elliot knew they had finally found their way back to the light. The town council's decision to halt Sterling Development's plans had sparked a wave of triumph in Evergreen Hollow. The shelter was saved, and the truth about Marley's family began to ripple through the community. Yet for Elliot, the fight was far from over. The evidence they had uncovered pointed to a deeper, more sinister network of wrongdoing tied to the corporation, and justice for the Everett family still felt distant. Christmas morning arrived quietly at Elliot's cabin. Snow dusted the evergreens outside, and the soft glow of dawn illuminated the small space where Marley lay curled by the fire. Elliot watched the dog, his heart heavy with the knowledge that their journey together might soon come to an end. Marley's role in this story wasn't just to find his place with Elliot, but to complete a mission that had begun 3 years ago. And Elliot knew the final chapter still needed to be written. Later that day, Elliot met Anna at the shelter. Despite the reprieve they had won, there was still tension in the air. Sterling Developments had promised to contest the council's decision, and the investigation into the Everett family's disappearance was moving slowly, hindered by lack of cooperation from key figures. "We need more," Anna said, her voice low but firm. "The council's vote was a victory, but it's not the end. Sterling won't just walk away." Elliot nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we dig deeper." Their resolve reignited. Elliot and Anna spent the next several days tracking down additional leads. They contacted former Sterling employees, sifted through more abandoned records, and revisited the locations tied to the Everetts. Marley was with them every step of the way, his instincts guiding them when their determination began to waver. One evening, as they pored over a map of the town, Marley suddenly perked up, his ears twitching. He stood and padded to the door, whining softly. "What is it, boy?" Elliot asked, setting the map aside. Marley barked once, then pawed at the door. It was an insistence Elliot had come to recognize. "He wants us to follow him," Anna said, grabbing her coat. The three of them ventured into the cold night, Marley leading the way. The dog moved with purpose, weaving through snow-covered streets and into the woods. They arrived at the old Everett property, the house silhouetted against the moonlight. But Marley didn't stop there. He continued into the forest, his paws crunching through the snow until he reached a clearing by the river. There, partially buried in the frozen ground, was something glinting faintly in the moonlight. Elliot knelt, brushing away the snow to reveal a metal box, its surface rusted but intact. Inside, they found a collection of documents, personal notes from John Everett and photographs of the family, including images of the unmarked trucks near their property. But the most critical piece was a handwritten list of names, many of which matched key players at Sterling Developments. "This is it," Anna whispered, her breath visible in the frigid air. "This could blow the whole thing open." Elliot stared at the box, his mind racing. The Everetts had known they were in danger. They had hidden these documents, hoping someone would find them. And Marley, in his unwavering loyalty, had kept the secret safe all these years. With the new evidence in hand, Elliot and Anna contacted a journalist from a regional news outlet who had been following the story. The journalist, intrigued by the trail they had uncovered, agreed to publish a detailed exposé on Sterling Developments and the Everett family's disappearance. The story gained traction quickly, drawing the attention of state authorities and forcing the company into the spotlight. The backlash was swift and severe. Sterling Development CEO issued a public statement denying any wrongdoing, but internal investigations revealed patterns of corruption, illegal waste disposal, and intimidation tactics. Several high-ranking executives resigned, and the company's influence in Evergreen Hollow began to crumble. The most emotional moment came when state investigators officially reopened the Everett family's case. Search teams scoured the areas near their property, uncovering more buried evidence that corroborated John Everett's notes. Though the full truth about their fate remained elusive, the Everetts were no longer just a forgotten story. Their fight for justice had been reignited. As the legal battle unfolded, Elliot found himself at a crossroads. For so long, his grief had defined him, isolating him from the world and burying his passion for photography. But now, standing in the midst of a community he had helped unite, he realized how much had changed. Marley had given him more than a purpose. He had given him hope. Christmas came and went, and the town began to rebuild itself in the wake of the scandal. The shelter thrived with the outpouring of support, and Anna's tireless work earned her recognition from animal welfare organizations. Elliot continued to volunteer, his bond with Anna deepening as they faced each challenge together. One snowy afternoon, Anna handed Elliot a wrapped gift. "You've earned this," she said with a small smile. Elliot unwrapped the package to reveal a new camera, sleek and modern. His throat tightened as he ran his fingers over the lens. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted. Anna placed a hand on his arm. "You've already started. Every photo you've taken for the shelter, every moment you've captured, it's been a part of your healing. This is just the next step." Elliot nodded, swallowing hard. For the first time in a long while, he felt ready to move forward. Marley's role in Elliot's life also began to shift. The dog, who had been at the center of so much, started to slow down, as if his mission was nearing its end. One evening, as Elliot sat by the fire, Marley rested his head on Elliot's knee, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "You've done so much for me," Elliot said softly, stroking Marley's fur. "More than I ever deserved." The next morning, a knock on the door startled Elliot. Standing on the porch was a man, his face lined with age and his eyes filled with tears. He held a photograph of Marley as a puppy, standing beside a boy, the same boy from the Everett family photos. "I think he was ours," the man said, his voice trembling. "Our boy loved him more than anything. When we lost everything, I thought we'd never see him again." Elliot's heart ached as he looked down at Marley, who wagged his tail softly, as if he understood. The reunion was bittersweet. Marley had found his way back to his original family, but in doing so, he had brought healing and purpose to Elliot's life. As the man and Marley walked away, Elliot stood at the door, watching them disappear into the snowy landscape. He felt an ache in his chest, but also a profound sense of peace. Marley had been his light in the darkness, and now it was time for Elliot to carry that light forward on his own. In the months that followed, Elliot returned to photography with renewed passion. His work, now infused with the depth of his experiences, gained recognition not just for its technical brilliance, but for its emotional resonance. His images told stories of resilience, connection, and hope, lessons he had learned from Marley. One day, as he walked through Evergreen Hollow, camera in hand, Elliot paused to capture the scene before him. Children playing in the snow, families laughing together, and Anna standing by the shelter, smiling as she waved to him. He pressed the shutter, the click of the camera feeling like a heartbeat, steady, alive, and full of promise. The past had left its scars, but it had also shaped him into someone stronger. And as the town's Christmas lights twinkled in the fading daylight, Elliot knew that Marley's legacy would live on, not just in the family he had returned to, but in every life he had touched along the way. Thank you very much for watching the video to the end. If you were moved by the story of the canine hero and the spirit of Christmas that transformed lives, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments what you thought of this exciting journey.